All right, guys, moving on to our next Patreon request, and this one comes from John McKinney, who asked me to do a ranking video of the Disney villains from the 90s. Disney and Pixar villains from the 90s, the Renaissance era. As always, if you guys would like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link in the description box below, head on over to my Patreon, hit the second tier, that'll allow you access to do so. But yeah, other than that, let's get started with the video. So this, basically, this video is a ranking video, and we're only doing the Disney villains from the 90s, Disney and Pixar villains from the 90s. And if you think a villain should be higher or lower on the list, that's totally fine. This is just my personal list, and I'm always excited to hear what you guys have to say. So let's work our way from the top, from the bottom down. I mean, bottom up. And starting off at that list, we have Sid. Sid's at the bottom because he's just a punk. Like, he's just this punk kid who has a decent life as a garbage man, we see, and I guess the toys scared him straight. But there's nothing really threatening about him. I mean, unless you were a toy. That's really about it. So, yeah. Next up is Governor Ratcliffe. Governor Ratcliffe is arguably one of the worst Disney villains. Not in terms of, like, what he's a colonizer. He is he basically had one of the hardest songs ever, and blatantly racist songs, and pretty much what the GOP think of themselves. We'll get to another villain who really represents the GOP in a second. In a little bit later, I should say. But Ratcliffe is just kind of boring. That's kind of the thing, is that he's really just a boring villain. There's nothing, like, all he wants to do is get rich and kill and murder natives, which is basically every white person that's come to white colonizer that's come to America, but I digress. Yeah, but he's not interesting. He's also just goofy and dumb. Yeah, so Ratcliffe at second to least. Next up on that list, we have, see, now it gets harder because it like all these other villains from the Golden Age it's really hard to, like, rank them. But the next one we're going to talk about is Hopper. Hopper is he's a thug bug, and more or less he has actually one of the best villain dialogue ever, of talking about, once if the ants ever figure out if they can outnumber us, that goes our way of life. And I love how that's kind of made the rounds as of late, talking about the 1% versus the rest of us. Bug's Life, when you look at it in this day and age, man, it really speaks to you. But other than that, Hopper, while he's threatening, he is scary. He's voiced by Kevin Spacey, so that's an equal level of terror. But I really do think he's a solid villain, but he's, compared to everyone else, he's kind of lower on the list. Because immediately he folds like every other fascist. He is kind of he's just a punk. Anyway, moving on to our next one on the list, and that is Clayton. Clayton's pretty intense. Clayton's a pretty intense villain. He doesn't really get a lot to do, but I think we can all agree he has one of the his death goes pretty hard, if we're being honest. I really like Clayton as a villain, even though, yes, he is. You can make the argument that Hopper's just a little higher on the villain list, but the reason why I like Clayton a little more is not just because of the death. It's also because, like, again, he's intense. He's a physical threat, and sometimes I just like a blatant villain who's just here to do blatantly evil things. So there you go. At the next one, it's Clayton. Now it's getting harder to rank them a little more. Next up, we have Oogie Boogie. I know, a Nightmare Before Christmas villain this low on the list. Well, Oogie Boogie, the problem is that Oogie doesn't really appear a lot in the movie. He just feels like a tail-end kind of villain. But the reason why I put him a little higher than everyone so far is because he's fun. He's a really fun villain and kind of a cool aesthetic of just a big bag of bugs and disgusting stuff. And he is the end of the line villain, but he doesn't really get a lot. He also has one of the best songs in Disney history. The Oogie Boogie song is awesome. Rip to Bill Withers. But yeah, I did debate putting him lower, but like thinking about like how much fun, even though he doesn't have a lot of screen time, as opposed to the other villains I've talked about. You know, I can't deny when he's on screen, you do get a smile on your face. Anyway, next up, Gaston. Yeah, Gaston is I've seen people make arguments for Gaston being the hero of the story, but at the same time, still kind of a horrible misogynistic human being, and kind of a garbage human being in his own right. Gaston is he's conniving, he's dangerous, he is a brutal human being, and also whipped everyone else into a mob fever, and also what every person who listens to a Theo Von or Joe Rogan podcast think they are, which is not a compliment. Yeah, I'm feeling spicy today. Anyway, so he's still like an entertaining villain, but also just clearly an asshole. Next up, Judge Doom. Judge Doom, man, this dude probably gave a lot of kids nightmares, if I'm being honest. Judge Doom was a villain that was an absolutely brutal villain who had this intimidating presence. That scene with the cartoon shoe will haunt you if you haven't seen it. Just kind of a really cool threat all the way through, and probably another one on the brutal death scale, if I'm being honest. Yeah. So next up, because now it's getting really hard because we're getting into like the bigger name villains. So next up on the list is Ursula. Oof, I know this is going to turn some heads, but Ursula, she's a great villain. She's a Disney villain classic. Like, let's be honest. She is a straight up Disney villain, classic villain. Someone who has she's entertaining. She also has a pretty solid plan, kind of. And also, like, you can't blame her because Belle signed a contract. And, like, you could make, like, legality-wise, she almost won. Through legal purposes. Like, that was kind of the crazy part. But yeah, it just gets hard now because now we get into the really like classic villains and really like holy crap, these guys are all these are the echelon of villainy right now. So next up, Jafar. Oh boy, Jafar. Another guy who has this great intimidating presence. Has arguably the best villain sidekick of all time in Iago. Also, another guy who won for a hot second, and also has some really solid, like, just a solid presence and intimidating voice. We also have a problem with him trying to predate on Jasmine. It's kind of a problem. It's very problematic, but just adds to the scumminess of the villain. Anyway, so next up on the list is, and this is going to be a hot take if there was any hot take out there, but next on my list is McLeish from Rescuers Down Under. McLeish is one of my favorite Disney villains in general, and I don't think people understand of like how terrifying of a villain he is. First off, he's voiced by George C. Scott, which already makes him intimidating as it is. But McLeish is quite literally one of the most terrifying villains because he's so real. He's actually like the closest we get to a cartoon version of Mick from Wolf Creek. Like, literally, those two characters are very close together. Dude literally tries to feed a child to crocodiles, all to get at an eagle. He's fierce, he's grungy, he's terrifying, and he's a very real villain. He's a very, like, real and terrifying villain. Like I said, it's very much like, I would not be shocked if the director of Wolf Creek looked at McLeish and went, I'm going to make a villain kind of like that in live action and turn it up to 11. Also, Joanna is probably one of the best villain sidekicks ever. But yeah. So, yeah, McLeish, I know it's a very underrated movie and he's an underrated villain, but this is where I rank them. Following that, For our final three, this one I could easily see like all three of them being in separate leagues. But at number 3, you got Scar, the villain who did win. Scar essentially did win. He took over the Pride Lands. He killed Mufasa, and everything was going well for him until Simba showed back up. He also has one of the best villain songs ever, and the hyenas are just awesome. But Scar is a megalomaniac. He's terrifying. He basically destroyed the resources of the Pride Lands in a matter of a few years, and had a private army who enforced his laws. Thank God there's no one like that going on, and nothing like that is going on in our country. Man, it's so weird to look at Disney villains and then realize, oh wow, this is really real, despite the cartoon talking animals. Also voiced by Jeremy Irons. You can't fault that. Anyway, next up, we have it at this number 2 spot, Hades from Hercules. Man, oh man, is Hades great. James Wood, not so much, but Hades is a great villain. I mean, say what you like. Yeah, James Wood is kind of a garbage human being. At the same time, though, he gives that character so much life. Like, he gives that character so much like animation and animated. His name. You see what I did there? There's so much energy to him. There's such and he's also, he can go from threatening to funny in like a drop of a hat. It's actually really fascinating to see that like kind of shift change in the character, if I'm being honest. Like, there's so much there. Awesome character, and it's a character that always gets a laugh out of you, no matter like if it was the movie or Kingdom Hearts or even in Mickey Mouse, House of Mouse. Why isn't that on Disney Plus, Disney? Why isn't Aladdin on Disney? The Aladdin the animated series on there, Disney. But yeah. So I'm pretty sure by process of elimination, if you know all these 90s villains, you probably are thinking you're forgetting someone. Like, you are like, who's obviously the number one is this guy, right? And you're right. For me personally, the number one villain of this Renaissance era of Disney is, without a doubt and without question, Judge Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. When I talked about like Radcliffe being a very real villain or McLeish being a real villain, that is all true. But you can take everything I said about real historical villains and apply that to Frollo, a man who uses religion and God as a weapon against those who are different. A person who believes in persecution is a righteous, holy war, and destroys anyone of a different minority, and uses the Bible and uses authority to justify that rage and that cruelty, and also lusting after those same kind of these minorities that you're supposed to destroy. Fox News would think this guy is just he's a little quirky, but I think a lot of his ideas are pretty solid. That's what, yeah, he is literally like Fox News's wet dream of a president. Anyway, yeah, Frollo is terrifying. Also, although regardless, I think we could all agree Hellfire is a pretty lit song, no pun intended. But still, terrifying, brutal, and above all else, a very real villain. So there you go, guys. That is my ranking of these Disney villains. But you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think? Where do these villains lie for you? Just comment below, let me know. Once again, I'd like John McKinney for this Patreon request, as well as continued patronage. And like I said, if you'd like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link in the description box below. Head on over to my Patreon, hit the second tier. That'll allow you access to do so. But other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.